Have you ever felt like there's something in the Bible, some deep truth that almost everyone seems to miss? What if I told you that hidden within its pages is a powerful secret that could completely change the way you see your life, your struggles, and even your future? This isn't just another Bible verse, it's a revelation that can unlock God's plan for you. Stay with me, because once you understand this, you'll never look at your journey the same way again. Ready? Let's dive in. Have you ever wondered why some people seem to rise above every obstacle, while others struggle no matter how hard they try? Is it just luck, hard work, or is there something deeper at play? The truth is, the Bible reveals a powerful secret about how God lifts people up, but most of us completely overlook it. We get caught up in our own efforts, our own timelines, and forget that God doesn't work the way the world does. He has His own process, and if we don't understand it, we might feel stuck when in reality, He's preparing us for something greater. Look at what Psalm 75:6-7 says. No one from the east or the west or from the desert can exalt themselves. It is God who judges. He brings one down, He exalts another. This means that no human effort, no amount of networking, and no worldly strategy can determine your destiny. When God decides to lift someone up, nothing can stop it. But here's the catch: He does it in His own time and for His own purpose. And that's where most people get it wrong. Think about it. Have you ever felt frustrated because doors weren't opening for you? Like you were doing everything right, but nothing was changing? What if I told you that delay isn't rejection, it's preparation? God isn't just placing you somewhere. He's shaping you for where He's taking you. The question is, will you trust Him in the process? Or will you let frustration take over and step away too soon? This is where faith comes in. We often want immediate results, but God works differently. He positions us strategically, just like He did with so many people in the Bible. And when the time is right, what seemed impossible will suddenly fall into place. But before that happens, you need to understand something crucial about how He operates. Let's look at an example from the Bible that perfectly illustrates this truth. Esther. If you had seen Esther as a child, you would have never imagined she'd become a queen. She was an orphan, had no royal blood, and wasn't born into privilege. In the eyes of the world, she was just another girl. But in the eyes of God, she was chosen. And when the time came, He lifted her up and positioned her exactly where she needed to be, not just for her own sake, but for a greater purpose. That's how God works. He doesn't choose based on human qualifications. He doesn't need to ask for permission. When He decides to exalt someone, it's final. But here's something we often forget. Before God raises someone up, He first prepares them in silence. Esther didn't wake up one day and become queen overnight. She went through a process, a season of preparation. And maybe that's exactly where you are right now. Maybe you feel unseen, like you're waiting for something to change, wondering when your moment will come. But what if this season of waiting isn't a delay, but a setup? What if God is positioning you in ways you can't yet see? The Bible is filled with stories of people who had to wait before stepping into their destiny. Joseph, Moses, David, all of them spent years in preparation before God elevated them. The waiting wasn't wasted. It was necessary. So here's my question for you. Are you willing to trust God's timing? Or are you trying to force something to happen on your own? Because when you try to take control instead of letting God lead, you might get ahead of His plan. And that's when things start to fall apart. But when you surrender to His process, when you trust that He knows exactly what He's doing, you'll realize that His timing is always perfect, even when it doesn't make sense in the moment. Now, let's talk about something that holds many people back: comparison. It's easy to look around and wonder, why is God blessing them but not me? Why do they seem to be moving forward while I'm stuck? But here's the truth. God's plan for you is unique, and comparing your journey to someone else's is one of the quickest ways to lose faith. Think about David. When the prophet Samuel anointed him as king, he didn't step onto the throne immediately. He went back to the fields, tending sheep, while Saul was still ruling. Imagine how frustrating that must have felt. He had the promise, but he wasn't living in it yet. He could have looked at Saul and thought, "Why him and not me?" But David understood something critical. God's timing is never random. What looks like a delay is often God protecting you from stepping into something before you're ready. And here's where many people make a mistake. Instead of trusting God, they start chasing after success their own way. They manipulate, push, and strive to make things happen on their terms. But when success isn't built on God's foundation, it doesn't last. That's why we see so many people rise quickly and fall just as fast. But when God is the one lifting you up, nothing can bring you down. So ask yourself, are you focusing on what God is doing in your life? Or are you too distracted by what's happening in someone else's? Because when you shift your focus back to Him, you'll see that He's already working behind the scenes. He's preparing the right doors to open at the right time. Your job isn't to force them open, it's to stay faithful where you are, knowing that when God moves, nothing can stop it. Here's something powerful to remember. When God exalts someone, He also protects them. Many people think elevation is just about success, but in reality, it comes with opposition. The higher you go, the more challenges you face. That's why God doesn't just lift you up, He sustains you. Look at the story of Joash. As a child, he was targeted for destruction because he was seen as a threat to the throne. The enemy tried to eliminate him before he could even step into his calling. But what did God do? He hid Joash, keeping him safe until the right time. When the moment came, Joash was revealed and took his rightful place as king. God's protection wasn't a sign of abandonment. It was a setup for something greater. Maybe you feel like God is hiding you right now. Maybe you're not getting the recognition you expected, the opportunities you prayed for, or the breakthrough you've been waiting on. But could it be that God is protecting you for a reason? Could it be that He's keeping you in a place of preparation so that when He finally reveals you, no force will be able to stop what He's about to do in your life? Because here's the truth. If God has called you, no enemy can cancel it. The world may try, circumstances may rise against you, but if God has placed you on a rock, nothing can shake you. That's why your focus shouldn't be on when or how things will happen, but on staying in alignment with Him. When the time is right, what was hidden will be revealed, and no opposition will be able to stand in the way. Now, let's address something that often trips people up: the weight of success. Many pray for elevation, but few realize that with greater influence comes greater responsibility. When God raises you up, He also expects you to remain faithful. The blessing isn't just about reaching the top. It's about staying there with integrity. Think about this. How many people have reached success only to lose themselves along the way? They start depending on their own strength, forgetting who put them there in the first place. But divine exaltation isn't about status, it's about purpose. If God places you in a position of influence, it's because He has a mission for you there. C.S. Lewis once said, "Humility is not thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less." This is key. When God lifts you up, it's not about making a name for yourself, it's about glorifying His name. And the moment someone starts believing their success is solely because of their own talent, they step onto dangerous ground. Because the same God who elevates can also remove. So here's the real question. Are you praying for promotion? Or are you praying to be prepared for what comes with it? Because when God gives you influence, He also gives you a responsibility. And only those who remain humble before Him can handle the weight of the blessing without it crushing them. If you want to be elevated, you must first be rooted in Him. Let's talk about something crucial: God's timing. One of the biggest mistakes we make is thinking that delay means denial. But what if I told you that God's "not yet" is actually His way of protecting and preparing you? Look at the story of Joseph. He had a dream of greatness, but instead of immediate success, he was thrown into a pit, sold into slavery, and wrongfully imprisoned. From the outside, it looked like everything was falling apart. But in reality, God was setting him up for something bigger than he could imagine. If Joseph had gone straight from his dream to the throne, he wouldn't have been ready for the responsibility. The process wasn't punishment, it was preparation. Maybe you're in a season where nothing seems to be moving. Maybe you're wondering, God, when is it my turn? But here's what you need to remember. God is never late. Every delay has a purpose. Every closed door is either protection or preparation. And when the time is right, things will fall into place so effortlessly that you'll look back and realize why the waiting was necessary. So don't let frustration push you to move ahead of God's plan. What He has for you is already set, it just has an appointed time. And if you trust Him, you'll see that when He moves, no force in heaven, on earth, or in hell can stop it. Now, let's clear up a common misunderstanding. Exaltation from God is not just about personal success. It's about fulfilling His purpose. Many people think that when God lifts them up, it's just to bless them. But in reality, He promotes you, so you can be a blessing to others. That look at Jeroboam. God gave him a kingdom, even though he wasn't born into royalty. But instead of following God's plan, he let pride take over. He started thinking the success was his own doing, and that's when everything fell apart. His story is a reminder that God doesn't just elevate people, He expects them to stay faithful. And that's the real challenge, isn't it? Many ask for elevation, but not everyone is prepared for the responsibility that comes with it. When God gives you influence, He watches to see what you'll do with it. Will you use it for His glory, or will you make it about yourself? So before asking God to promote you, ask yourself, am I ready for what comes with it? Because the higher God lifts you, the more He expects from you. If you want to be positioned by God, you must also be willing to remain surrendered to Him. That's the true key to lasting exaltation. Here's something most people don't realize. When God lifts you up, opposition will come. Many assume that when they finally reach their breakthrough, everything will be smooth sailing. But the truth is, new levels bring new battles. Look at Nehemiah. When he set out to rebuild Jerusalem's walls, he immediately faced resistance. People mocked him, plotted against him, and tried to stop the work. But Nehemiah didn't waste time arguing. He kept his focus on the mission. And that's exactly what you need to do when opposition comes. Some people will question your promotion. Others might try to bring you down. But here's the good news. If God placed you there, no one can remove you. Psalm 27:6 says, "Now my head will be exalted above the enemies who surround me." That means God doesn't just lift you up, He protects you while you're there. So don't waste energy trying to prove yourself. Your success doesn't need an explanation. Let your life be the evidence that God's hand is on you. Stay faithful, stay humble, and watch how He fights your battles for you. Now, let's talk about the biggest mistake people make after God lifts them up, forgetting who put them there. It's easy to stay humble when you're waiting for a breakthrough. But what happens after the blessing comes? Look at King Saul. God chose him, anointed him, and positioned him as king. But over time, he started relying on his own strength instead of God. He let pride take over, and that's when everything started falling apart. God didn't remove Saul because of lack of ability. He removed him because of lack of obedience. That's a serious warning. Success without surrender is dangerous. If God elevates you, it's not for your own glory, it's for His. And the moment you start thinking you don't need Him anymore, you step into dangerous territory. So here's a reality check. Are you chasing success, or are you chasing God? Because if you seek Him first, everything else will fall into place. But if you chase the blessing more than the one who gives it, you might end up losing what you were given. Stay humble, stay surrendered, and remember God is the source, not the reward. So, what's the real secret hidden in the Bible that most people overlook? Divine exaltation isn't about status, it's about purpose. When God lifts you up, it's not just to bless you, but to position you for something greater. It's not about recognition, it's about responsibility. Many want to be elevated, but few are willing to go through the process. Waiting isn't a waste, it's preparation. Opposition isn't a sign to quit, it's confirmation that you're stepping into something bigger. And success isn't the goal, obedience is. Because when you stay surrendered to God, you don't just rise, you remain strong in the place He has positioned you. So, are you ready to trust God's timing? Are you willing to wait, to grow, and to stay faithful no matter what? If this message spoke to you, let me know in the comments. And if you're believing for God's promotion in your life, type "I trust God's plan" below. Also, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs this encouragement today. And if you want to dive deeper, check out this next video right here. I know it will bless you. Until next time, stay strong, stay faithful, and remember God's plan for you is greater than you can imagine.